So, hi everybody, to the 31st FinTech and InsurTech meeting. Can you hear me? Can you give me some feedback if the sound quality is okay for you?
Perfect.
At least two.
Yeah, it works for me.
Wonderful. How many people are we currently? Can somebody count the people because I can't
16.
find 16. Okay, then three more than 3 minutes ago. Yeah, let's give people the chance to join and quickly start with the introduction. So our FinTech Meetup was postponed from, I think, from September to what is today, October, because of sick leave, I would say. And in last May, we had the last meetup about sustainability in FinTech. And today we continue with the positive side and the helpful side of FinTech and talk about financial inclusion as a theme for this night. And so that's basically it. Let's go to the next slide. Hosts, we have two, just in case. So first of all, it's me, Matthias, and I work at Day in IT management, especially for banks and insurance companies. And I help them to improve their workplace, to get into the cloud, improve the employee happiness, and so on and so on. And we have also Lena. Maybe you want to say 2 sentences.
Hi, everyone. I'm a former FinTech founder located in Kassel, mentoring a lot of startup founders, focusing on the FinTech area so far. If you have any question, if you are right about starting a FinTech, just let me know and we can jump on a call. But for now, happy to be your co-host tonight and talk about this very relevant topic.
Great. We also had an alternative topic, but we have chosen on purpose that we want to have that theme. And first of all, we thought also nobody's interested in sustainability. Can you asking questions like, can you make money out of it? Or who cares? Who basically cares about it? And don't we have already enough discussion about financial inclusion? Or is it kind of an artificial discussion? But we decided no. Some housekeeping. So the event started at 6:30 approximately, and we finish 8:30. So if you want to order food, then tell them to deliver 8:30. You can keep your video on, but of course you don't have to. And you can mute yourself if you don't talk. So in order when the cat is entering your keyboard that we don't have some noise. Especially important to put questions in the chat that we can make it a bit more interactive. If you have some kids noise in the background, it could be my kids, but I don't want to put them out of the flat. That's why. So we're recording the event. If you don't want to be in a YouTube video, you won't be, because we're just recording the speakers and shared presentations basically. So no worries about that. And if you're on Twitter, then use the hashtag FinTechCGN or @FinTechCGN to mention us so that we also see what great stuff you're posting. Next one is Zoom chat. I had that already. So today we have 3 nice guests who care about financial inclusion. We have Susanne Krehl, founder of the Fabit GmbH. Basically, they're producing an app to help people be more conscious about their finance, become debt-free, and kind of financial coaching apps. She just launched it this summer. Before she was working at Barzahlen, and she's I think a good business developer and PR person. But there's more to say, of course, about Susanne. Then we have Julia with us. She's working at Via FinTech. It's a company, I think it was acquired by PaySafe. It's a company founded in 2011 and active in several markets, making yeah, huge amount of transaction every day. And is also, you can find products of via FinTech at 20,000 retail locations across Germany. Yeah, so that's Julia. And then we have also Brad from Gaia Chain. That's a blockchain solution for, I would say, govern forest work, or yeah, he will tell you later. Yeah, so what's the next step would be basically having 10-minute pitches of our guests so that you can become familiar with them, you know what their background is and what solutions they have to offer for the markets. It will take approximately a little bit more than 30 minutes. And then Lena will moderate a panel discussion about financial inclusion and how FinTech can help out here. And you are also invited to put your questions into the Zoom chat and get it answered by our panelists. Then, and approximately 8:15, 8:30, we finishing, and then you get also enough sleep, and you can also watch some Netflix series if you want. Yeah, that's the theme. Let's start with the pitches. I would say we start with Brad. Is Brad already here? I need to fix something with my...
Yeah.
Ah, hi.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I have just one technical issue with my Zoom because I need to... I can stop sharing, basically. That would help a lot. Now I can also see everybody. Wow. It's getting crowded. So I make you a presenter, Brad. If you have... Do you have slides or not?
Yeah, a few.
Okay, cool. Then I'm giving you permissions to share your slides because you're co-host now.
Okay, let's see.
So basically, while Brad is just searching for his PowerPoint presentation, I can maybe add a few sentences about him. So Brad has been in 6 countries, I think. He has worked in the forests and in preserving nature, basically, and has also built, I think, a blockchain solution to incentivize caring about woods and keeping it alive and making it more transparent to govern it. Is that a video?
Well, it's a little clip, yeah, just to fly over the forest a little bit to relax.
Oh, that's nice, yeah. Maybe you can just be quiet for 1 minute and enjoy the forest.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not going to give my usual pitch. I'm going to just give a basic overview of what we do, and then I want to show everybody an app that we're developing. It's very early stage, but it's much more relevant to financial inclusion. So I thought that would be better than the full pitch, which isn't completely irrelevant. Okay, so how do I... 1 second. So just the basic overview of what we do. The basic goal is to help raise funds for biodiversity conservation in a new way, and also to distribute those funds to ensure that they have the maximum impact. I'm just going to go quickly to this slide, which is the most relevant. So how exactly are we doing that? Well, there's 3 steps here. The first is to mobilize funds, and then to generate yields, and then to just distribute those yields. So what we're building is essentially, it's called a yield sharing protocol. I'm not going to get too much into the tech, but essentially we're generating funds from blockchain nodes and from a crowd loan platform, and the funds are loaned to protocol that uses decentralized finance to generate yields, about 20% APY. And then those yields are they're shared. So they're shared with the project, like a conservation project, and then they're shared with the lender, and then they're shared with there's a little bit for Guy Chain and the Treasury. So the point here is to essentially rethink how conservation finance works. Instead of it just being charity and donations, it's an investment that can, that can be quite profitable for both the project and the lender. So I wanted to focus on this brown circle here, the distribute yield, because that's what's the most relevant to the discussion today about financial inclusion. And let's see, if I change my browser, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Changed. All right. So please keep in mind that this is a low fidelity early app here. It's built on blockchain, on the Algorand blockchain to be specific. And so this is going to be improved over the next year. We're going to test it in Uganda, but this is, imagine you're somewhere in the world where you want to invest in forest landscape restoration. That's why it's called the FLR chain. So it's actually a white label solution for IUCN. And you want to contribute to a project for various reasons, for any reason. Now, the way that normally works is you would have to send money through the banking systems, normally through an international NGO. And then they would have to send the money to, say, Uganda, to the capital, to a bank. And then the project would have to get in the car and drive all the way to the capital, to go to the bank, to get the cash and bring the cash out in the villages where these funds are distributed to incentivize the restoration of the forest. So what we're building here is a tool where you can skip all that, and you can send the money directly to the people who live around the forest, and we're calling them stewards. And they don't need a bank, they don't need a bank account, but if they have one, that doesn't change anything. So it's a tool to send incentive rewards directly to unbanked participants anywhere in the world. And you'll see here we have what's called the investor dashboard, and you'll see that there's 5 USDC, and that's, if you know about cryptocurrencies and blockchain, that's a common stable coin, and that's real money, which I added via my credit card here. And you can contribute to a project. These are some of the projects that I've contributed to. And then when you go to this, can you see the pop-up that just came up here of the mobile app?
No, I haven't seen it. It was too fast for me, maybe.
One second. That's the problem with Zoom. Advanced sharing options. How do I get it to show everything on my screen? I'm supposed to be a tech CEO, and I can't figure out how to work Zoom. Well,
I also have trouble with it, although I have studied informatics. So.
Oh, that's a shame. I can't show you all the actual app that the stewards use to get paid.
I think you need to unshare and select desktop 1, I think, maybe. Okay,
1 second. It's not a huge problem, but 1 second. Share screen. Here we go. See that?
Yes.
All right, so imagine that you're in a rural village and you're in Uganda and you participate in a project and you want to earn, you want to access your incentive rewards immediately. So this is the project that you belong to, and here are the tasks. So here it says plant X amount of Y species, and your reward is 2 cents. Agroforestry on X amount of area, etc., etc. So these are of course not real. They're, you know, it's a demo. So essentially, you upload a picture of a tree or supplies some other data as required, and then you submit it and you get paid. So here is, I earned 2 cents. I took a picture of my lamp a few minutes ago, and I have 2 cents in there. And if you go back here to your wallet, this is the wallet, and you'll see here I have 76 cents for these various transactions. So it's real money. There's no bank, and the transaction was immediate, and the money can come from anywhere in the world. Okay. And but here's important: the cashing out, because here we start to get at the practical challenges of the financial inclusion with blockchain, right? So you have 76 cents of USDC in your wallet. Well, what are you going to do with that in Uganda, right? So the idea is to transfer that into the mobile money, but there's a few other options that we're exploring as well. But there are, to be honest, there are quite a few practical challenges to doing this. And it would be great to get some feedback from some other participants if they have any ideas or anything to share regarding that. So that's about it. That's just the basics of what I wanted to show. So to summarize, our focus is really on inclusion in terms of people who are on the ground there and investing and restoring and conserving the forest, and to make the incentives paid to them much more efficient, transparent, and rewarding, and they don't need a bank account. Okay, so I'll stop there.
Okay, so thank you for the. So that's basically it for you. I think 10 minutes are. Let me think about it. I think the 10 minutes are gone. There's a question from one of the people. So we have also time for 1 or 2 questions. I just read it out. Who does check the projects, project leaders, and the progress of the projects, and how do you address money laundering issues? That's a hard question for such an early prototype.
How do we address the money laundering?
Yes.
Well, that's, I mean, so it's a project that you're funding. You're not just sending money. It's not like, we don't have we didn't construct a public blockchain that anyone can use. Well, we built an app on top of blockchain. So that's not an issue. And what was the other question?
Who's checking the projects, maybe, and validating it, doing due diligence or monitoring them?
Yeah, so I didn't have time to go into detail, but there was a third dashboard there for the facilitator, and that's a dashboard where you have all the monitoring and quality control. And we're gonna change the app where when you submit your photo of a tree or whatever, you don't get paid automatically. It goes through a process where you request a payment, and then the payment happens when the data is verified.
Mm-hmm. And why have you used the Algorand protocol or chain, or?
Sorry, what?
You mentioned this Algorand
Oh, Algorand,
coin.
yeah. We use Algorand because it's really easy to develop on. The transactions are fast and almost free. It's just a really good blockchain, and it's green because it uses the proof of stake instead of the proof of work, so it doesn't have the carbon footprint that Bitcoin and Ethereum have.
Okay, cool. I think we have also some other questions, especially me. And maybe is there an insurance integrated, and where does the money come from? So, I mean, people can invest. Why do they invest? Because they get some interest. But where does the interest come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it can be from a donor who they just have, it's the public funds where they have a forest conservation or restoration project, or it can be a private company.
Mm-hmm.
Say for example, you're a chocolate company and you want to achieve some sustainability goals regarding zero deforestation in your supply chain. Well, you can set up a project in your supply chain with partners and use that sort of app to distribute the funds. Because, for example, in Cote d'Ivoire, where we've done a lot of work, I mean, you're talking about thousands of farmers, right? And just to get the sustainability premiums paid out to them is an absolute logistical nightmare. And it's subject to lots of fraud, and because it's cash.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the context.
So, and there are many stakeholders that needs to be managed, and I can imagine it's a complex problem. So, unfortunately, there are more questions. Maybe then Lena can cover them in the panel. Let's go to the next speaker. I gave you too much privileges here in the Zoom call. Can you give me back the host permissions? or maybe I got it. I got it now. Let me just give Julia the next. Julia, do you have also slides or no slides today?
Yes, happy to share.
You have. Okay, you get some co-host permissions and you can share if you want.
Beautiful. So let's see.
So Julia from via FinTech, compliance and risk management department. And also I think Barzahlen is one of the biggest solutions you offer with an API and some other services. So curious to learn about it more.
Yes, thank you so much for the intro and for hosting tonight. Yes, so I'm Julia. I started out 2 years ago via FinTech as compliance manager, and meanwhile heading the operations and risk department. And yes, at via FinTech, it is our purpose to deliver simplified financial services for everyday life. So to make financial services accessible for everyone, everywhere. And we have, I think, a proven success story, having celebrated our 10th year anniversary this year. So it actually shows that products that do focus on a good cause and financial inclusion absolutely have relevance. So FinTech at a glance, as was already said in the introduction, the company was established in 2011, so back 10 years. In the meantime, we've managed to build a product portfolio of 6 different products. The main one, which you already mentioned, Matthias, was called Barzahlen. We've now rebranded it to ViaCash, as we followed our international expansion across Europe. And as you can see on the right-hand side, those are the markets where our payment service solutions currently are live. And then the other ones you see in addition are to follow over the next quarter or two. So right now servicing in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Italy, Greece, and Spain. And Poland, UK, France on the roadmap. Over the last 10 years, we've managed to build a network of 20,000 POS, so point of sale, so 20,000 different retail locations where you can actually physically conduct the service. We do more than 1 billion in volume and have over 500 merchants integrated. Also grown exponentially in terms of employees over the last 2 years since I came, roughly doubled. And yeah, as international or even more than our current country portfolio. Just to give you a brief overview, and I don't want to be too salesy here. So this is a rough idea of our POS network. So we have a broad coverage, especially in rural areas. So against the trend of urbanization, to also service end customers in more rural areas with financial services. So what are we actually doing and how are we responding to actual needs that customers have and other participants in the market with our payment solutions? So we have 3 points of focus. We have the customer, the end customer in the end. Then we have here in our example, the bank that we're connecting also through our technological infrastructure with the retailer. So it's a 3-party transaction or connecting at least 3 different participants during a payment transaction. And our services generally are easy and simple for the end customer to use. I'm happy to give a few examples in a minute of how these solutions look. And then we enable merchants. In this case, it's the banking sector. So we have 3 different sectors that our B2B customers, the merchants, may come from, either banking, bill payment, or e-commerce. And then we enable the end customer of our merchant to, for instance, pay his bill that he got at the e-commerce shop or from his utility company, so he can pay the bill at the retail store, at the POS location, instead of having to do a transfer from a bank account or going to a store of the bank or the utility company to pay the bill. And the other opportunity is for the end user to use the POS location as an ATM, so he can cash in and cash out money from his bank account at the POS location. So what really motivates us at Via FinTech, and how does all this relate to financial inclusion? So our mission and what really drives us is we want to simplify financial services for everyone. So currently there are hurdles in the financial system that exclude specific either entire social groups or individuals in society. They exclude them from using financial services because they don't have a bank account. And our solutions don't require a credit card, a Giro card, or a bank account. So we provide the end customer through an API which is integrated with the merchant. Then the end customer receives a barcode and he can pay for his transaction at the POS when the retailer just scans the barcode with his hardware that he has integrated in his cash desk anyway, and can pay for this financial transaction. So we use existing hardware, and there's no need for additional hardware, and they just integrate our software via an API. So that's our why, and also already the how. So how do we do it? We achieve this goal of bringing financial services to everyone through our API, which we connect on one hand on the retail side, so in the cash register, on the other hand at the merchant and his website. So if you do your checkout where you usually choose credit card or bank transfer, you can choose via cash. And then that happens through the API integration, which is then enables the end customer at the POS to just show the barcode and pay for his goods or services. Or in the banking case, maybe there are some N26 customers here. When you open your app, there is a feature enabling you to deposit or withdraw cash at the local Rewe store around the corner. And yes, that's our solution, white labeled so that it's integrated in the native banking app. Just going over this briefly. So how do we actually fight financial exclusion? For one, there is the current big trend of downsizing infrastructure from banks, but also from other merchants. So there are less POS locations or where they can naturally fulfill their financial services. So with our 20,000 POS network, we extend the existing branch networks of banks through each and every one of our POS locations. So that the problem of demographic change and stronger urbanization, and therefore rural areas being less included and having less branch networks, we tackle this problem. Then the second big challenge that we also tackle is that the cash infrastructure is expensive and it's not really environmentally sustainable. So, but cash is still necessary and a very important factor for financial inclusion. And through our network, we shorten the cash cycle and enable cash to stay relevant and retailers to still accept cash. Because as the number of card transactions rises, maybe the willingness to accept cash is declining. So we prevent this mechanism. And last but not least, also on the side of technological inclusion, we add a benefit. So when we also integrate we don't only integrate with banks, but also with neobanks who often don't even have branch infrastructure. So their customers are dependent to use ATMs that are rather expensive. And we integrate with those neobanks to also allow their customers to have a cash in and cash out solution. And this is especially important as our world is getting more digitalized and more technologized, that we don't leave anyone behind who cannot bridge the technological challenges of, for instance, earning a salary in cash or having pocket money they want to deposit on their account, but not having a bank around. And just to come to the last aspect, one that I'd like to focus on a little bit more, I was saying that we shortened the cash cycle and that our solution is more sustainable. You can see here how the traditional old version of the cash cycle works with many participants. So with our solution, we managed to cut this cycle significantly and thereby also assist to a more sustainable usage of cash and more sustainable financial services overall.
Cool.
No questions.
Finished. Any questions for Julia? You can write it in the chat or just directly ask if you like.
I'm super looking forward to the panel discussion, as I thought of Brad pitching his company and talking about like that those people reforesting using the mobile app. You see the mobile trend as a problem, if I got it right, Julia. And Brad, mobile is the basis technology for you to reach the people that reforest the forest. So quite let's keep this for the panel discussion. And the same with cash. I have Brad in mind saying cash is a problem, and you saying let's keep cash awake. Very interesting positions here. So stay tuned for the panel.
Yes.
I think, yeah, go ahead.
And the Pay Safe, I mean, you mentioned also your mission and your why. Your parent company, Pay Safe, are they sharing the same vision? Because I just read on the website that they serve the petrol industry and Forex and lotteries and so on. Do you like your parent company?
That's a tremendously good question. So I think if I can bring a little bit of light into the dark, so there are two different products that PaySafe services. One is the PaySafe card, which is the traditional business that you just mentioned, and that includes gambling, gaming, adult, and also maybe more dirty industries. And then there's the second, the second part, which is the cash division. And via FinTech, with its cash products, is going to be, or it belongs to the cash division. And this is dedicated to the cleaner and safer products for sure. So we don't have any clash in our vision, and also not with the parent company, to be honest, though still, of course, the merger lies ahead of us, and we're all already anticipating when we can finally start talking to each other openly after the closing is done, because so far we're still in the closing phase, so I can't, of course, disclose too much. But yeah, the company culture so far and the people we've met are very much aligned with what we foresee for the future, not only of via FinTech, but also via cash and the products that we deliver now and want to deliver in the future.
Cool. And do you really need this retail location, because people can just use their mobile phone to kind of pay invoices or to pay? Is cash still relevant?
Yeah, I think the most straightforward way to answer this is yes, because any mobile payment, at least the ones that are not based on a blockchain, require a credit card. And just recently looking again at the latest statistics, just shows there's a massive part of the population that is not, so it's averaged through the age groups, roughly 50%, that don't have credit cards. And also for mobile payments, if I want to use Apple Pay and so on, it's actually a credit card payment, and people usually forget that. And so we have a massive part of the population that cannot participate in these credit card-based mobile payment solutions. And then there's also still some which are not the early adopters that are willing and ready to spend their money and distribute it via cryptos. So I think there's still a long way to go, and a transition of society that to a company, and there will still also always be people who prefer cash just for other reasons as security or accountability of their finance.
Yes, and budgeting using envelopes, for example. I have, by the way, I have an EC-Karte on my wallet here from the Berlin Sparkasse. So it's the only one that is accepted at the bakery to get a coffee. Okay, so then looking at the time, I have some other question, but looking at the time, I would say we go then to the next guest, which has been here a couple of meetups ago. I will put you in spotlight. Please don't erschrecke. Add the video spotlight. And yeah, so you, I think, Susanne, you had a sabbatical recently, and then you just launched your an app, which is also kind of relevant also for me, because I'm in the financial advisory scene or community also as a side hobby. And yeah, so maybe you can also introduce your maybe your new app. I think you have also been at Barzahlen, as I mentioned. And yeah, but just introduce your startup for us. I'm giving you also host credentials here.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me again. I have also prepared some slides, which I will share right now. So this is Fabit. Fabit is basically an app that will help you improve your financial life. And why this is important, I think we're going to have to look at some statistics. 10% of the German adult population are over-indebted. Over-indebted does not mean you are paying off your apartment you have recently bought. Over-indebted means you cannot pay your bills on a regular basis. And the largest group among those over-indebted people are people under the age of 35. Being indebted or over-indebted is independent of income, but also poverty and not being able to save are severe problems in our society. 29% of all Germans do not have any savings at all. So whatever they earn, they spend within the same month. And part of the reason for that is insufficient knowledge, especially the young people under the age of 35 do not have sufficient knowledge in terms of managing their finances. 25% do not even have sufficient knowledge in the areas of budgeting, debt and rate payments. And that's because of the fact that 83% of everyone in Germany learns about finance from their parents. And if the parents don't know, the children won't know either, especially since financial education is not part of going to school in Germany. That's why we have founded Fabit. The goal of Fabit is optimizing your financial habits, because your financial behavior is part of your identity on a long-term perspective. We have built a mixture of active financial help, which includes budgeting, rate payments, creditor and debt overviews, up to creditor communication, which we manage for you. It also includes a very basic education, so everything you should have learned in school. Questions like, how does a credit card work? How can I open a bank account? What exactly does my salary statement say? Why should I do a tax declaration? How much money should I spend on rent? So like the very basic questions that kind of surprise a lot of people when they're actually confronted with them in their adult life. And the third component is a behavioral science approach, which we have integrated into the app, because our role models are not the traditional finance apps, but rather apps in different areas of your life that improve your habits. So it can be nutrition apps, such as Weight Watchers or Noom. It can be sports apps, such as Freeletics. It can also be like mental health apps that concentrate on being more aware, like, for example, Calm, Headspace, or Fabulous. And we have built a finance app that actually makes finance understandable and manageable for everyone, because we also avoid terminology every one of us still uses in our industry, and where people just don't understand what we want from them. And we have also excluded percentages, for example, from the app. So the only numbers you will see in that app are amounts of money. So Fabit really is aimed at making budgeting very, very easy. Our target group are young adults up to the age of 35. Those young adults prefer an app because it's anonymous, and they are not really inclined of like phoning some debt counseling and going there to an appointment. So that's why we have built a fully digital solution, but in cooperation with debt counseling agencies who have supported us in developing the product. And we are really aiming at improving the improper financial management that a lot of young adults do. So this is actually the main reasons for young people of being over-indebted. 27% up to 25. Next 10 years, it's 19% of the over-indebted people really do improper financial management. But the amounts of debt are not really that high. So we can actually find solutions with our customers how to get out of debt on their own. And this is what we're trying to do with Fabit, because people can get instant help. They don't have to wait for appointment at debt counseling agencies. They don't need to phone anyone. It's a fully digitalized solution where you can start at 3 a.m. in the morning if you want to. Fabit is also very motivational. We have more than 100 Fabits in the app. So it's savings tips, basically things you can do in your everyday life to improve your financial habits. And we have also integrated a community, because our customer research has shown that everyone who made it out of debt had someone in their private life who accompanied them. Can be a partner, a family member, a friend. And that's what we're trying to build with our buddy system. So you can have a buddy getting out of debt with you. And you can basically do that at every time, no matter whether it's 3 a.m., whether it's a Sunday, you can always work on improving your finances. So that's it so far for Fabit. I hope I could shed some light on the financial realities here in Germany, because within our industry, we often only see like neobanks, trading apps, crypto finance apps and stuff like that, where I am interested in, and basically every one of us here in our group is, but we really have to fight difficulties a lot of people have in managing their finances.
Should I buy this new iPhone or wait then?
We have the app live since 5 weeks now on Android. The iPhone app, the iOS app, is going to come this month. So give me another 2 to 3 weeks until you can download it.
Okay, now I have an iPhone. It's just if I should spend that much money, because I'm kind of tempted to just spend too much money on it. Yeah, cool. Any questions for Susanne from the audience? There's one. What feature tip has made the biggest impact into people's life?
It's a combination of everything. It's especially motivational. So a lot of people sometimes have the urge to start and then can't really follow through. And we have developed a kind of complicated system, including pacing and tailoring and everything that you don't really see as a user, but the timing when we send push notifications, for example, is really, really sophisticated behind that. And everything we try to show you also in terms of education is basically aimed at improving your situation. It's not the one thing and tomorrow you'll be debt free. It takes some commitment, and it also takes like a journey in order to change your habits.
And also, I think the community aspect or having the buddy is quite important, as I have seen on Instagram, there's a kind of a hashtag debt free or financial coaching, or just people who want to get out of debt and not pay so much buy too much stuff. And they motivate each other, and then they post, look, I have paid off $50 this month. Exactly. And that's really impressive how they work their way up again.
Exactly. You can see those groups all over social media, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. And I think that's very important for people to have this exchange with the community. And in Fabit, we provide kind of like a safe space. You can choose what you want to share, and you can really celebrate your successes within the app with the whole community or just with your buddy that you have partnered with.
And how's your, maybe in just 2 words, your back end? What's behind that you get the connection to the bank accounts and so on? Or do you have what's your stack basically?
We have developed the app in Flutter, which is the Google-based language, and which allows us to have a very fast iOS app transition. So it's not completely native in the Android universe. And the backend, we use a stack of Java, Kotlin, together with the Spring framework.
Mm. And I've seen also some open jobs on your website. Maybe somebody's developer and interested or knows somebody who works with Flutter.
Yes, definitely. We have some big partnerships coming up, and we would love to be a lot faster. So if there's any developer here, please let me know, jump on board. We would love to have you joining our team.
Yes, and is there also is there a conflict of interest? Because as I've seen, later on, you take maybe membership fees or a subscription because you also need to finance your services. Are you planning to sell kind of refinancing or loans? Yeah, like
at the moment, we are only live with a free version, but it's going to be a freemium model. When we go further into debt management and also further into finance products, we will have different monetization options. First of all, monetizing the app via the user itself. So we're going to go into debt management and actually provide some active help with that. And that's where the premium model is going to kick in. And we will also have like B2B monetization channels over commissions when offering finance products.
Okay, very good. But it's not that a high, like a Peloton subscription, like paying 40 euros for the free premium version.
No.
Okay, good.
So there's an Australian competitor or like role model. They're not a fully digitalized solution. Basically, you can have also personal conversations via video chat with their debt counselors. And they have been existing for over 10 years. And they charge about 100 euros per month per customers for their services.
Yeah, that's a lot for some low income.
Quite a lot, exactly. That's why we're building a fully digitalized solution and cooperate with debt counselors. So when somebody is really looking for some personal conversation and wants to have this personal interaction, then we connect to the debt counseling agencies.
Good, then let's, I would say, transition to the panel because we are kind of already discussing. I would like to hand over to Lena, if you're ready, if you like, and move myself out of the screen here. So,
and get the
stage is yours.
On the screen.
Yes, I'm doing that.
Thanks, perfectly. Yeah, after having listened to the pitches, the 3 pitches, let's get into a discussion around financial inclusion. I invite the panelists to share numbers, studies, use case examples, experiences you made as, I'd say, financial inclusion experts, to make it really tangible for our audience. What financial inclusion is about and what needs to be changed regarding this topic. I personally have not been involved in the financial inclusion fintech world, but for sure I do have some prejudices. At least I'm biased because I'm framed by the fintech bubble Susanne mentioned. Well, financial inclusion and the solutions that you pitched, that's a market where you cannot make money because the target group has no money. How do you, like, are people interested in the topic? How do you raise awareness and all that? So a lot of doubters, I say, out there. Let's help them. Let's clarify those myths about financial inclusion. To kick it off, I think it's helpful always in a panel to somewhat define what do we talk about, and not by just naming a definition, but explaining from your personal view what financial inclusion is about. Brad, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Well, I think that to me, like a lot of it, it's about less barriers, right? Because when you try to open up a bank account, for example, particularly in somewhere like Africa, which I've done a few times, it's really hard. It's impossible for most people, in fact. So I think that financial inclusion is really about really reducing the barriers to accessing some sort of financial network that allows you to easily interact with others. It's my first thought that comes to mind.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I mean, the financial industry has been there for centuries, and still, I wonder why hasn't anybody solved these problems? There are so many banks out there, financial institutions. What barriers are you talking about? So Julia, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, love to. Thanks. Yeah, I agree on the breaking down of barriers. That's super important. But maybe to come to that part of your question, why has no one solved the problem in the last 100 or 200 years? I think maybe there are three key reasons to it, and only one. Maybe the first one is related to the fact of financial gains. So of course it's easier to make money off wealthy people who are well included in society, and to offer this wealthier part of the society solutions. So maybe to at first only build custom solutions for this more privileged part of society. But I think that's and that there's less revenue with people who are currently financially excluded. But I think that's only a minor reason. I think it's more about the fact that there wasn't the infrastructure to actually include everyone. So over the last decade or two, we've seen a massive increase in digitalization and technologization, which has led to more infrastructure that actually enables financial services and financial inclusion. So I think that this technology shift has given us the opportunity today to be more financially inclusive. And that's something that evolved over the past 1 or 2 decades, as I said, and was more difficult and more costly before. So here I wouldn't really blame the industry. And then maybe there's a last point, which is also currently in focus. So if it was about financial inclusion is about power. So those who will be included are those who have the power. Now, if I look at the boardrooms of banks or of those who shape the regulation in which then the financial industry works, this used to be more of the privileged part of society, and hence they're more financially included. Now we see a great stakeholder activism from young people, from those who are financially excluded. And I think by this shedding the spotlight on these people and on the group, they are gaining more power, and that also leads to more financial inclusion because they're being heard more and seen more, even if they bring less revenue, to say it in a very in an old-fashioned style.
Thanks for sharing those examples of technology burden, etc. Susanne, go ahead.
All right. First of all, I would like to contradict your theory that you cannot earn money in this area. There's an old saying in our industry: the less money you have, the more you pay to use it. And this is especially true in areas where people don't have access to a lot of financial solutions. So when you look at the whole cycle, if you don't have enough income, you pay for a bank account. You need to have a minimum income coming in every month to have a free bank account at a lot of banks. If you look at loans, if you don't have any securities, you pay more interest. If you look at remittance, if you don't have access to a bank account, or if your peer doesn't have access to a bank account where you want to send money, you will pay like horrendous fees in the whole remittance money transfer market to actually send your money. And this saying is very, very true. It's just not the cool areas of fintech where people develop like new products, which we have seen in the last 10 years of financial technologies, because those are not the hip, trendy areas of our sector where people develop new solutions. And in terms of financial inclusion, we actually, in my opinion, need to look at our own home markets also, not only because when people hear the words financial inclusion, you think of Africa, you think of India, you think of third world countries. Actually, our own societies here in Europe are very divided in terms of access to financial products. And this is also where we need to build new products in terms of making this more equal.
You are bringing up a point where I want to dig in a bit deeper, comparing different geographies. Maybe we can dig deeper in this and compare what's the current status of financial inclusion. Are there areas in the world where it is worse, better, and what's the reason why it is either worse or better financially included societies? Brad, having your focus in Uganda, I think you said, would you say it's a less financially included society, and if so, why?
Compared to Europe? Compared to,
yeah, for example.
Well, if you're talking about access to the traditional financial structures like bank accounts, then yeah, it's much it's really, really hard to get a bank account for most people. The amount of documents that they have to supply, which most people just don't have, it's just a barrier, right? But in Europe too, like I'm an American that lives in France, and I could not open up a bank account in France for a long time. So I went on N26, these new the internet banks, and it took me about an hour. So even someone like me who's supposed to have access to that bank accounts in Europe, I couldn't. I just didn't have the documents either. So I know how it is, but but to go back to your question, yeah, in Africa, particularly in Africa, it's just cash based, right, and barter as well. But there's also a big problem with just the lack of cash as well, and just to access it, and just so many, it just costs so much money to and the transaction fees as well. So yeah, it's financial inclusion is not something I would say is common in most parts of where I worked, which is in Central and Western Africa, compared to Europe.
And how do you frame that for the last, I'd say, 10 years in Europe, Julia? What's the development here? Are we getting more financially included, or is it getting less? Do people get more aware of it? Do you have any facts or figures or experiences how the topic, how people are aware of the topic or not?
So I can't give you any specific statistics on the awareness for the topic, to be exact, but I think what we've seen over the last 10 years is probably what we've seen in most areas where things as like the negative sides, such as poverty, have been declining. We said over the past, or before COVID, we were on a really good path to have more financial inclusion. We had more women being educated in poor countries, so there was more education. There was positive movement on infrastructure, closing wage wage gaps and everything. And it was the same for, I think, financial inclusion over the years before the pandemic, that it was getting a little bit better through a better IT infrastructure everywhere. So there was more access to financial services and solutions. And now we've seen, and there was more prosperity. And now Germany has gone through the pandemic rather well because of the Kurzarbeitergeld that was then copied in many other states. So people haven't been hit as hard. So I think the backlash in Germany hasn't been as hard on financial inclusion as it has been in more of the southern European countries. And you're seeing that in the social scissors, which is growing apart even further now, which is actually sadly enlarging the use case for our product, because the cash usage is going up again in the very low income families and regions and overall group of society. So the poor group is growing again, and those who need services such as Fabit on financial education, and that are actually going back to cash usage to handle their finances. And maybe as a last comment, to have a more global comparison, I think we in our Western bubble and in our Berlin tech or German tech bubble believe that everything's on the foremarch in the right direction, and that Europe may actually not be as bad or as slow. But I think Europe is very slow in taking up on the infrastructure challenges that there are to financial inclusion. Because if I compare European markets, and especially the German market, to, for instance, Brazil and Latin America, where the government established a scheme where peer-to-peer transactions are now possible at any retail store location. So the government said, in terms of to cut corruption in the banking system and to enlarge financial inclusion, the government implemented a technical system that every retailer has to include, and to circumvent the monopoly of the banks and foster financial inclusion. And they rolled this out within, it's called PIX, Sake PIX and PIX, and they rolled it out within, I don't know, I think 1 or 2 years. So fascinating. Whilst in Europe, we are discussing if maybe in 2025 we are going to start something with digital central bank digital currencies. So I think that the countries we deem as less developed and behind, for instance, Brazil and Latin America, may actually be on a better path to financial inclusion than we are.
I think you're making an interesting point, because you're switching the perspective to the ones who we might think are responsible to improve financial inclusion. So who are the stakeholder, or the ones who do you see to be in the role of taking responsibility to improve financial inclusion, naming the example where the government jumped in? Any thoughts on that? Whose responsibility is it to get more financial inclusion? Susanne, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, staying in Germany with our thoughts, first of all, I think financial education should be part of school everywhere in Germany, and this should cover the basic questions that you need for your daily budgeting and like surviving in your adult life without having the risk of being indebted. Well, second of all, there are a lot of initiatives also on a regulatory basis which improve financial inclusion and which also fight poverty in some way or another. In terms of inclusion, for example, in the European Union, there is the right on a bank account. So you can basically open a basic bank account in every European country. You do not have a right on money on your bank account, on the other hand. There has been a recent regulation regulating fees in terms of dunning processes and claims management, which also reduced a lot of weird fees flying around in that area. It's basically, it should be a mixture of the state, in my opinion, which should make financial products that are basic to our normal everyday life accessible. So, for example, that thing on a bank account, but also making the knowledge that you need to manage your finances accessible for everyone. At the moment, for the current adult generations, this is basically covered by private companies. And I don't think that should be part of our tasks. So in an ideal world, FABIT wouldn't have to do this whole financial education thing that we're doing.
So would an ideal world have a 100% financially included society, right? What would it look like? What would be different?
Like savvy and like knowledgeable society, I think, because in my opinion, in my very personal opinion, it's a shame that in Germany people leave school and have never heard about basic financial questions they are going to be faced with in their adult life.
That's not a problem in Germany, though. Only that's a problem all over the world. I think. I mean, I know in the States,
it depends.
that's a
There
huge
are other
problem.
countries,
yeah.
Depends on where we're talking, but like covering the whole world in this discussion is kind of ambitious.
Yeah.
You're an US American citizen. How about financial education in school there?
That's terrible. That's terrible. You know, you finish and you don't even know like how to balance a checkbook. You know, I mean, it might have changed because it's been a while for me, but it's bad. Yeah, it's a serious problem. I mean, the Americans have the most debt of anywhere in the world. I mean, we're talking it's insane amount of debt.
Yeah, I think I'd like to pick up on what you said earlier, Brad, about breaking barriers and maybe taking that as a point to look at who are the stakeholders. So if we think about breaking down the barriers, who can help and participate right now? That's obviously for one part the fintechs here in the room right now discussing, and it's obviously also to some part the state, but that if you separate it, I like to look at it as one part is education and the other part is infrastructure. And education starts everywhere, whether you educate in school and whether you give people a class called not household work, but household finance, for instance, in 10th grade or 9th grade before they have to leave. So that's a super important part. And the other is also like giving accessibility via the right infrastructure. And that are topics like internet access, right? So that all these wonderful services that are being created and that try to unite the real physical world and the digital world and also make the finances accessible all over the world, they require the right infrastructure. So I think if you ask which are the relevant stakeholders that should be accountable, they're for one, the ones that are participate in the education, and in Germany it is the schools, most of them are state governed. So we need a change in the schooling plans for schools in Germany or in Europe or in the US by those who have the power to change the rules and to, for instance, so on the educational side, I'd agree that a big part is to be carried by the government. On the infrastructure side, I think we've seen in multiple examples that the government aren't the best ones to improve and to take a futuristic approach here and to actually sustainably or change something there. So we have light tower examples, the BER, the Berlin airport. Then everything ranging, I think the standard example is the Sydney Opera House, where they went 300% above the budget and wild numbers. So whenever the government is supposed to build infrastructure, usually it fails. And I think here they should rely on the support of the private sector and have public-private partnerships to really drive this forward. And until the government is ready to take its responsibility on the education side, luckily we have entrepreneurs like Susanna who help out and fill the gaps. But I saw the question in the chat earlier, shouldn't we also start with an app for people even younger? So age 16 teenagers, kids still going to school. Yeah, hopefully that's the next step until responsibility is taken up and the right circumstances created by the government.
And how far are you working towards pushing government or other stakeholders that you say are rather responsible for achieving higher financial inclusion? And how far do you work towards this goal? Because on the other hand, Susanne, this would mean that you can go on a world tour again and can close FABIT down because it's not needed anymore. And how far do you yourselves as panelists, as founders, contribute to this progress? I see Angela Hornberg's comment saying, but we have been knowing and saying it in the last 20 years and nothing changed, nothing. We heard from you guys, yeah, there were technology changes, etc. But still, I think it's good to be that provocative. And now, kind of, as you are our financial inclusion experts, give it back to you. What do you do to include government, to include all the ones and be of and trigger a sustainable change here?
Well, first of all, FABIT is one of the companies trying to close that education gap and promoting financial inclusion products everywhere, basically where we get the chance. Educational politics in Germany is kind of a holy cow, because every one of the 16 countries has its own authority over educational politics. And that's also why it is so difficult to introduce new topics to our national education plan. It doesn't only affect finances, it also includes like media savviness. It includes digitalization topics up to coding, to have a basic understanding about our world that has developed within the last 10 to 20 years. And I don't think we're really good at that in Germany, and something needs to change. But other than talking to politicians, which we definitely do, there's basically no real power I, as an entrepreneur, have over that. But I also see a lot of new politicians, a new generation of politicians. Some of them I know personally. For example, the founder of Kitchen Stories, Verena Huberts, who has recently entered the Bundestag. They definitely are aware of all those problems. And maybe it's just a question of time. I really hope that Angela is not right and we're going to have to suffer this problem for the next 20, 40 or 60 years.
Yeah, sometimes you suffer such a problem because it doesn't hurt too much. Like Susanne, again, the FinTech bubble. I hope all of us that are joining are tremendously privileged in life. And how do you raise awareness if it doesn't hurt the majority of the society? Now, this is a philosophical question.
Yeah, I really like this question, and it actually goes in the direction of what I was thinking before, because there are two things. One is responsibility, and the other is passion. So the question was raised, and there was said, okay, there hasn't been any change. So at first, I disagree. I think that the process of raising the awareness and having the discussion in this round at even higher levels, that is something new. It's slow, but we're in a democracy and things in a democracy move slow, but I prefer living in a democracy than in a totalitarian regime where things maybe move within 5 years. But I cannot agree on any of the other values. So in a democracy, things just move slow. I think there is change, and I think if you want to move it, and then you should take the responsibility at every level for it. So it's what I do on a daily basis. It's what I do to drive the company goals. And I cannot just put it on someone else. So if I say financial inclusion can be teaching my nephew how to take care of his pocket money, and it can be working towards, in our case, at Via FinTech, for instance, expanding our retail network and making sure that it gets to every rural area of Spain, because they have a more fragmented distribution network, and then therefore they have more chains. They don't have a big Rewe. So that's, for instance, something we do on a daily basis. We're working on bringing it to more countries in the EU, so that also there are seamless services for people from different countries that can transact through our network. So those are things that we do at a company level. And then also, as I said, at the personal level, there's a lot that you can change. But how do you do that? You need the passion. It's like I come from compliance. Nobody likes compliance and nobody wants to work with it. It's unsexy. It's a bit like, financial inclusion. It's nothing you make a lot of money with. It's a cost center, basically. So what we have to do is, with our passion for the topic, set other people's on fire so that they want to join. This is a pull, not a push marketing. You have to pull people towards wanting to follow the same goals, and you need a strong vision. But yeah, it's very philosophical.
Yeah, it definitely is. And just a few pragmatic statistics here. When we do events on crypto, there are up to 100 persons in here. We did a sustainability event, Matthias mentioned in the introduction of tonight's event. There were around 20, I'd say not more participants in the audience. And now today, talking about financial inclusion, we again have those 20. Still, like this is the fintech bubble we are in. But I think beside, and now I'm sharing my own opinion, I think beside those vision and passion, people with the vision and passion, they need to get into slots where they have power, to change it. Verena Hubert's, Susanne, referring to a politician that might be, I don't know her personally, that might be in one of this kind. It's good that she is now in the position to change the things, right?
Yeah, but also, I mean, everyone who's passionate about their work or their country or their environment or whatever, at some point gets to the question, do I get involved in politics, yes or no?
It's a prerequisite, so to say.
Exactly, for everyone who's engaged with whatever. And then the question always comes, can I change more where I am now, or can I change more for politics? And for me personally, the answer has so far every time been, I can change more in the entrepreneurial world and the real economy out there, because democracy is slow and I like to see results. But I think it's a tremendous success when people decide to go the step and maybe see for themselves that there is power in politics.
What I would like to add as a last discussion point, and then open up for the audience step by step, is when I compare Google to, is it DuckDuck? Like this, I can't hear you, Susanne.
Sorry, DuckDuckGo.
DuckDuckGo, this searching engine. This is like nobody, like I can't hear DuckDuckGo, but I can hear and I do see, and I'm framed by Google. Now Google doesn't have the best image. DuckDuckGo doesn't have the awareness and maybe not the needed image to get the awareness. Talking about brands that you are building within financial inclusion, how hard is it to establish a strong brand that people follow, that VCs listen to, because the world out there rather listens to the Googles instead of the DuckDuckGos. I hope this comparison helps to come up with some thoughts on this context. Susanne, how hard is it to raise money as this very socially driven fintech?
I think VCs are not here for doing good. VCs are there for multiplying their investment, and that's what VCs are looking for. Besides, we do have a trend on some like social impact capital funds, but nonetheless, they also have goals they will have to achieve. And I also don't think a business should be a non-profit organization. So nevertheless, we need to make money, and we will make an important amount of money. So, and I think we have also seen with via FinTech, even though it's a completely unsexy cash business, it's one of the biggest financial technology companies in Germany right now and in Europe right now. Which has been sold for a very good amount of money. And nonetheless, definitely raising money in a VC environment, you will have to have like a vision to make money yourself. So I'm not raising money for a non-profit organization.
And I think this is what often people think. If you work in such in such a field, you are not there to make money. But I think like this ethical question of, is it allowed to make money with, in our case here, mainly poor people, and then coming back, and maybe also like coming back to the beginning where you said it's expensive to be poor, but it's less expensive to be financially included, right? So offering services not as expensive as they currently used to be, look at Western Union, etc., might be a good step.
I think as an entrepreneur, you should have values, and we will, for example, not offer certain solutions which are really not good for people. For example, me personally, I'm not a real big fan of payday loans. So bridging the gap between now and your next salary coming in with a short-term loan. Because we have seen that in the US, and it's a big trend coming to Germany and to Europe as well. People who get a payday loan once get payday loans forever and ever and never really get out of that. And the interest rates are just horrendous. I do think you should have values as an entrepreneur in terms of what you're offering. But as I said, the less money you have, the more you pay to use it. This is also true. And with poor people, financially uneducated people, and people who are just not good with managing their money, a lot of companies make a lot of revenue with. For example, the dunning and claims management industry makes 8 billion euros in Germany alone every year.
Yeah, also on the part whether it's unethical because we're taking money from the poor. I truly believe that is not true. Because at least for our solution at Via FinTech, it's a B2B model. So we don't charge the end customer anything. And also the rates, usually at least all the rates that I know, for instance, even if for a bank then takes our white label solution, integrates it into their app, then a part of the services is usually free, so they pay no fees. And the other part of the fees, all the fees I've seen, are still lower than withdrawing money from an ATM. So actually this is a product that is not disadvantageous to the end customer. And I think that there are many such upsides to the solutions in the market. And just one thought on the fact of raising money. Yes, our company, for instance, is not a hyper growth company. It's not a gorillas, right? So, and what attracts investors and VCs is hyper growth, because that's the trend right now. And sustainability is unsexy. I have a friend with a very sustainable business model, making revenues in the black numbers from year one. And the investors told him the ticket is too small and your business is too sustainable. There's not enough risk involved. So yeah, that is a challenge to tackle. But then on the other hand, in the end, if the VCs want companies that they will sell at higher multiples, then these companies also require talent and people who are building the business. And today, more than ever, people with talent are people who have passion, and those are attached to a goal. We've seen in statistics of generation Z, Y, and Alpha, so all the millennials and the younger generation, that they want to work in a place of purpose and meaning. And you will not attract talent if you don't start incorporating at least one fact of E, S, or G in your business model. And hence, I think it is a factor that VCs don't look at the first step, but later on, I mean, once the seed round is over, you still need to invest your money somewhere. And once this hyper spring of startups and money ends, and the investors will be looking for more solid investments again. And those may exactly be in the areas of financial inclusion, where people work who have a passion and a purpose in this, and delivering something, giving something back to society. So the business will make money and give back.
That's a cool picture to aim for. Maybe a last question. I got the impression that the panel was quite how to say, like nice to each other and nice to the world out there. Maybe for sure mentioning some disbalances and hurdles and problems, and that something needs to change. But may I invite you, and I also can give you a couple seconds to think about that. Make a provocative quote on why we need to change something, or in general, make a provocative quote on financial inclusion. While you think over it, I cover a few seconds. We got a lot of questions running through the chat, and I would like to invite you in a few seconds to join the discussion. Stay with us, and the panelists will be here a few more minutes, and we can have an open discussion on the questions you might still have. Yeah, and now it's up to you. I would like to have a bit like more noisy and pushing ending quote from all of you panelists. Brad, do you dare to run first?
A provocative quote about financial inclusion. Okay, if we don't start to make more strides to include more, then we're screwed, because because the gap between the haves and the have-nots is just going to get wider and wider, and then that's there's all kinds of problems associated with that, political, environmental, etc., etc. So that's my quote.
That's exactly right.
That's not provocative, Susanne.
Well, okay.
No, but that's right. I was going to say the same thing, because I've been traveling a lot, and we are not aware of how great of a country and how great of a society Germany is sometimes. Also in terms of equality, because being poor in Germany does not have to mean you live on the streets and you starve. You starve to death in a lot of countries. Being rich in Germany does not mean you own like 3 castles and I don't know, whatever. The gap in Germany is really not as far as in many, many other countries. And I think that should be a value, because coming along with that gap, there are a lot of problems in society, a lot of crime that comes with that, because people are hungry. People fight for their lives. And we should really value this integrated society that we have, where we have help being offered from the state and from several organizations working here. where we have like a free school system that everyone can attend, where we have access to financial products, maybe not to wealth. It's kind of hard being a poor child and being really, really financially successful in life. But we do have a lot of things that are achieved in our society. And sometimes I get a little scared. Maybe that's because of all my travels, and I have seen different kinds of societies, that this whole gap that is getting bigger, definitely, is becoming too big. Your microphone is off.
Thanks. Julia, as time is running by and discussion is going on in the chat, and I really want to involve the audience that was that patient with us. Julia, what's the quote? Short and sharp.
Short and sharp. I think we need to take care that we don't leave behind a part of the society in our growing prosperity, and that true equality requires financial education, that it requires of men and women the same, of the young population, to have a country that is ready to tackle the challenges of the future. If we want to be a prosperous society in the future, we need financial inclusion and equality on all levels. Yes, I think that's my plea.
Thanks.
And by the provocative part, I don't think it's going to be solved with crypto and blockchains and mobile payment solutions over the next 10 years. Maybe in 20 or 30, when we have near orbit satellites providing internet everywhere.
You know what? The next time I'm moderating a panel, I'll start with the provocative quotes, because I think Brad is like, I need to answer this and go after this. The statements of crypto won't solve it, but let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I agree about that. The crypto is not gonna, save the world. It's not the answer. Yeah, I agree. But I think it should be part of it. But I think it needs to be regulated more, because there's too much risk.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my boring answer.
Yeah, thanks again to all three of you, Susanne, Julia, Brad. Let's stay here, and Matthias, let's open up for the audience and have another 5 to 10 minutes open discussion. I've seen a lot of comments and questions, Thomas Köppen quite actively. But Matthias, do you want to wrap it up front for tonight's event?
I would say, because we're losing one after another.
Go ahead.
5 people. So I would say, like to thank all people coming. I would highlight maybe the next meetup, because before you leave, it would be cool if you just sign up for the next meetup. And you can also tell us what theme you would like to talk about. Do you want that we go more into the blockchain direction, or do you want to cover us wealth management, or maybe anything again in financial inclusion? Just tell us in the chat or email where you have some contacts or some speakers you can suggest, and just click the links I post in the chat for the next meetup. Yes, and I would like to also continue the discussion about that we have started in the chat already, hijacking your panel. And maybe starting with the question, is BNPL, buy now, pay later, pushing financial inequality? I think not. But who wants to answer?
Oh, I love that question. I think it is, because most people can't handle their spending habits. And actually, that's independent of salary level. It doesn't matter whether people have 10K a month, 5 or 2. it's equally distributed. People can't handle their finances, and I think buy now, pay later is a big evil in the room that's adding to this problem. And yeah, that's a strong statement there.
There's another community on Instagram. So if you have paid off your debt, so the hashtag debt free, if you finished with that, there's another hashtag called financial independence. So people who are beyond zero, they're just starting with their journey to become financially free. And they have a strong also community teaching each others to keep the budget, to save into ETFs and so on. So I think there are some people who can handle that. And I think it's also convenient with this buy now, pay later to just streamline your finances. So if you maybe need a car for your jobs, then you can pay it. Or
which buy now, pay later are we talking about? Are we talking about like classical bill and rate payments, such as offered by RatePay and big e-commerce shops? Or are we talking about short-term loans? Because when I see neobanks offering buy now, pay later, because that's the new trendy word, then it's basically short-term loans with interest rates ranging up to 20%.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this buy now, pay later, where you maybe have 4 installments or 12 months time to pay for something in even chunks that are without any interest fee, I would say. I also don't like these consumer loans with 150% interest rate, although I know people who invest in it.
I also believe the short term is bad for habits, because people are, so the younger generation, especially the ones that would be in the target group of habit up to 35 years old, are the ones on social media clicking on ads, buying stuff they elsewise wouldn't. And I think there's I forgot the figures to be, but the percentage or the rate of people who get lured into bad financial habits through these things is far bigger, the dark number, than we know and we believe, because people don't talk about it. It's so I think that also in the true buy now, pay later segment, there are dangers, and it's not necessarily beneficial.
May I add something?
Sure.
I'm in Toronto, and this has been absolutely fantastic. And I love the openness, and the objective of conversation is to not be right or wrong, but to make progress. And I love, it seems like that's happening here. One question I have with the suggestion that people are not capable of managing their own money is, why are governments allowing institutions who act as agents of the government to implement these types of schemes? That's one. And two, the most important and obvious problem in the world is that governments are completely incapable of handling finances in any way, shape, or form, because they're driven by self-interest. And so, I'm from a dictatorship originally, and I love Canada and moved here with my family. And so that's my frame of reference. I'm not suggesting I'm right, but those are questions I believe that should be answered.
Well, may I? The regulatory environment is actually not that bad, I think. So whenever you offer a financial product, you are legally obliged to deliver certain information with that. I think the problem is that people don't understand those information, because
how could they? Because quite frankly, the government, when you look at, I can't make reference in Germany, but I can make reference in Canada with the socialization movement across the world. People are not incapable of spending properly. When you look at an average business in Canada, when you total government taxation on a small, medium business, 10 years, 15 years ago, it was 23%. I'm making reference to some of my friends' businesses, and I have a lot of friends that own businesses. And today that number is 41%. And that's also true of the individual. So take, for example, in the 60s and 70s, one family earner could take care of the family. Today, 2.5 can't even take care of the family. We have to focus on answering those questions and not talk about the regulations are there, because too much regulation is there. That's the problem. Too much regulation equals too much government. Too much government means too much taxes. And government over governance is becoming a problem. So these questions need to be answered at the grassroots, not further down the stage.
I think those are great points you made, and I'd like to start somewhere else maybe, and maybe I can get to the core of your question. So what is the core problem? That the people, if they were able to handle their finances, then they wouldn't, they could either find ways, for instance, to circumvent or to have more favorable circumstances. So for instance, if you say, if the population is educated in a financial way, then they will not vote for those parties who are negative for their own financial freedom and their future. And hence you don't get the government that increases all the tax rates. And now the screen has disappeared. So I believe that you would get a different government that would be following, the government does in the end what society votes for. So if it's populist to take a decision that will prosper your finances, and you have a well-educated financial society, then you don't run into this problem. So I think you need to start with the education to see some fundamental change. You need to change the voter, to change the government, to change the outcome of the government.
I do agree with that. It starts with the education, but perhaps that's one reason why the governments haven't focused on it.
That's possible. That's possible. And one last point, because you said banks are agents of the state. Banks are not agents of the state. The central bank.
In technical terms,
agent.
no, but facilitation, yes.
Okay, in terms of a household, you may be right there, but the central bank is the agent of the state.
Well, again, right, there are gray lines and unwritten rules in everything we do. And yes, while your statement, I would agree, on the technical and quote unquote written is entirely different than the behavioral and performance.
Anyone else with thoughts on this or a new question? Other than that, it's been a long discussion. It's probably an open-end discussion, Alvin, right?
It really is, and it's just understanding exactly where to start. I believe I've turned 7 companies around and grown them. I'm now in the investment banking arena, taking companies, early stage companies, to the stock market. And we do that because we're tired of the big corporations, again, acting as agents of the government and skimming. We want these young companies to flourish, to shine, create meaningful jobs, and create organic wealth versus simulated skimming. And it's a beautiful thing. So it's something, it's not only my occupation, it's also our passion here at Listing Partners. And it's been, I mean, you know what, I thank everybody here for what's just been a fantastic and open conversation. I haven't had one of these in a very long time. I feel like I'm having coffee with my friends down at the lake.
Great to have you here, Alvin.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Any other thoughts, Matthias, Thomas?
Let's watch the video from Susanna. She put in the chat.
The YouTube video?
The YouTube video.
I think
if you could kindly excuse me, this has been such a captivating conversation. I'm 24 minutes late for my next meeting.
Okay, you are also invited to join the next meetup in November. And yeah, you can also watch it on YouTube maybe if we manage to publish it. But in the end, I also yeah, enjoy our conversations because they're not so like, I mean, except today where Lena wanted to be provocative. I like also the balanced approach to emphasize the pros and cons. But obviously, it's easier to get a quote for LinkedIn than if you just ask for it.
I'll be sure to register for the next event. In fact, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, cool. Bring
Have
some
a great
friends.
day, Alvin.
And as
Yeah.
my friends from Texas say, I know the pleasure is yours, but I enjoyed it as well.
Bye,
Bye for
Alvin.
now.
Bye. See you,
Cheers.
Alvin.
Well, I guess that a lot of people who are currently dialed in are dialed in. But maybe if there are no further questions, let's wrap it up. It was a pleasure. It's a relevant topic. Let's go further after it. It's good, Julia, Susanne, Brad, and probably others also within the audience that are fighting for more financial inclusion. And it was a pleasure to discuss with you and push this forward.
And vote for the right politicians then afterwards. So in 4 years.
Have a great evening and talk to you soon. Thanks
Talk to you
again.
soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, ciao.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.